Water is often called the essence of life, the most vital element sustaining all living beings on Earth. We depend on it daily to quench our thirst, to cook our food, to grow the crops that feed us, and to sustain the ecosystems that support life. Yet as crucial as water is, its availability is under unprecedented threat. In fact, experts warn that in the not-so-distant future, water might become one of the most contested resources on the planet, igniting conflicts and reshaping geopolitics as fundamentally as oil did in the 20th century. The looming specter of water scarcity is not a distant possibility. It's a growing crisis that demands our immediate attention and action. Today, nearly 2 billion people live in regions facing high water stress, meaning they are running dangerously low on clean, accessible water. This number is expected to grow rapidly as climate change accelerates. Rising global temperatures are disrupting traditional rainfall patterns, melting glaciers that serve as natural water reservoirs, drying up rivers that have sustained civilizations for thousands of years, and causing droughts to become longer, more frequent, and more severe. At the same time, human population growth and industrial development are driving water consumption to record levels, putting even more pressure on these already strained resources. Projections suggest that by 2040, global demand for freshwater could outstrip supply by as much as 40%. This isn't just a warning. It's a clear indication of an impending crisis that could threaten stability across the globe. Understanding how we arrived at this perilous point requires us to look back through history. Ancient civilizations, whether in Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, or China, depended heavily on their proximity to vital rivers like the Tigris, Nile, and Indus. When these rivers dried up, shifted course, or became polluted, the civilizations that relied on them faced decline or collapse. These historical patterns remind us that water scarcity is not a new challenge, but a recurring theme in human history. Today, however, the stakes are higher. Modern nations still depend on these ancient waterways, but with far more people, more industrial activity, and fewer options for adaptation. The situation is compounded by transnational conflicts over shared water sources, where national interests clash with regional stability. Take, for instance, the Nile River, which flows through 11 countries in northeastern Africa. Tensions have escalated dramatically between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia over the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Ethiopia views the dam as essential for its development and access to electricity, vital for lifting millions out of poverty. Egypt, however, perceives the dam as a threat to its historic water supply from the Nile, which it relies on for over 90% of its freshwater needs. The two countries have exchanged military threats, and negotiations have repeatedly failed, leaving the future of the river and regional peace hanging in the balance. Similarly, the Indus River, shared by India and Pakistan, two nuclear-armed neighbors, has been a long-standing source of tension. Their water-sharing treaty has held through decades of conflict. But as India constructs additional dams and diverts water upstream, Pakistan accuses India of a water terrorism, warning that water scarcity could become a trigger for conflict in an already volatile region. In Central Asia, the shared rivers and reservoirs pose another complex challenge. The 5 former Soviet republics, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan, depend on the same water sources for agriculture, hydropower, and daily life. Upstream countries like Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan prioritize hydropower development, aiming to generate electricity for their populations, while downstream countries like Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan rely on the same water for irrigating crops. Climate change, shrinking glaciers, and reduced river flows threaten to exacerbate these tensions, eroding diplomatic trust and raising the specter of conflict over water rights. The impact of water scarcity is not limited to international disputes. It also destabilizes internal social and political structures. In Syria, a history of drought and water shortages contributed to rural displacement, which many experts believe played a role in triggering the civil war. The drought severely impacted farmers and rural communities, leading to unemployment, migration to urban centers, and social unrest. In Iran, long-standing disputes over dwindling rivers have led to protests and clashes between farmers and security forces. Across Mexico, criminal organizations have begun to exploit water shortages, engaging in water theft from aquifers and pipelines, often with violent repercussions. In parts of the United States, states like Arizona and California are engaged in fierce battles over dwindling supplies from the Colorado River, which provides water to millions of residents, farmers, and industries. These examples underscore that water scarcity can breed unrest, fuel conflict, and undermine stability within nations, creating internal crises that can spill over across borders. The geopolitical stakes are even higher when considering China's role in the water landscape of Asia. China controls the headwaters of many major rivers, including the Mekong, the Brahmaputra, and the Yangtze, and is actively building large dams upstream. Downstream countries such as Vietnam, Laos, India, and Bangladesh are growing increasingly anxious about China's water projects, which can influence water flow and availability. The power to turn off or reduce water flow, even temporarily, becomes a geopolitical weapon, yet current international treaties lack the mechanisms to regulate or limit such actions. This gives China and other upstream nations significant leverage that can be exploited in times of regional tension. Despite these alarming trends, there is room for hope. Innovation, cooperation, and sustainable water management practices can help mitigate the crisis. Desalination technology has advanced rapidly, with countries like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and California leading the way in turning seawater into potable water. Improved irrigation techniques, such as drip irrigation, can drastically reduce water waste in agriculture. Water recycling and reuse programs help stretch existing supplies further. Additionally, nature-based solutions like restoring wetlands, reforestation, and watershed management can enhance natural water retention and improve resilience against drought. Moreover, some nations have begun forming joint commissions, treaties, and regional agreements designed to share water resources peacefully and equitably. For example, the Indus Water Treaty between India and Pakistan has served as a model of cooperation, although challenges remain. However, these efforts require trust, long-term vision, and substantial investment, qualities often lacking in current global politics. The greatest danger, however, lies not in the scarcity itself, but in the reactions it provokes. As water becomes more scarce, nations may act defensively or aggressively, redirecting rivers, sabotaging dams, or claiming water sources as territorial rights. Water conflicts could escalate into violent confrontations, especially in volatile regions already plagued by political, ethnic, or religious tensions. In a world increasingly fractured by climate change, inequality, and geopolitical rivalry, water could become the spark that ignites regional or even global conflicts. The possibility of a future where water wars overshadow traditional conflicts is no longer science fiction but a pressing reality. What can we do to prevent this bleak future? First, we must recognize water as a strategic resource, equally vital as land, oil, or military strength, and prioritize its security. Governments need to invest heavily in water infrastructure, conservation, and management, treating it as an essential component of national security. Second, access to clean water must be recognized as a fundamental human right, an ethical imperative that transcends borders. Ensuring that everyone, regardless of geography or income, has reliable access to safe water is crucial for global stability. Third, diplomacy and science must work hand in hand, jointly developing data-driven, fair, and enforceable water-sharing agreements that foster trust rather than suspicion. International cooperation, transparency, and mutual benefit are key to avoiding conflict. Furthermore, we must foster a global culture of water stewardship. Education campaigns can raise awareness about water conservation and the importance of protecting water sources. Businesses and industries should adopt sustainable practices that minimize water waste. Local communities can engage in watershed management efforts, ensuring that water use is sustainable and equitable at the grassroots level. Investing in research and innovation is also vital, finding new ways to harvest, store and purify water, especially in arid regions. Finally, raising awareness is essential. This is not a distant problem for future generations. It is a crisis unfolding now. The water wars are already beginning, not with tanks and bombs, but with dry fields, empty taps and protests. If we act decisively, by investing in sustainable solutions, fostering cooperation, and respecting water as a shared resource, we can turn the tide. Water has the power to unite us when managed wisely, not divide us when exploited selfishly. Because ultimately, the next world war might not be fought over land, oil, or ideology. It could be fought over something as simple and as vital as a glass of water. Our response today will determine whether water becomes a symbol of global unity or a catalyst for conflict in the future. To conclude, the challenge of water scarcity is one of the most urgent issues of our time, demanding a collective global effort. It requires visionary leadership, innovative solutions, and a deep sense of shared responsibility. We must remember that water is more than a resource. It is the foundation of life itself. Protecting it is not only a moral duty, but a strategic imperative. Let us act now, with wisdom and resolve, to ensure that water remains a source of life and hope for generations to come. Because in the end, our future depends on how wisely we manage this most precious and irreplaceable gift.